So before I actually started discerning the priesthood, I was in a dating relationship. And it was in that context that I found myself in 2011 going to World Youth Day in Madrid. Obviously, it's a crazy event. There's like 1 million youth and young adults. They're waving their flags, everyone's cheering, everyone's excited. And often these groups were accompanied by a priest, kind of a chaplain. My group was the same. And one thing I noticed was that in the midst of all these groups, including our own, where we were all excited, we were all happy, the priest was always kind of in the background. He's kind of quiet, he's kind of just being a little more even-keeled. And yet something in me, whenever I saw those priests, I knew that this man was the happiest man in that group. And I don't know what it was that kind of stirred that up in me, but that led me to ask, like, what is it that these guys have? And logically, if I'm asking that question, I knew it's because I didn't have whatever they had. So when I went back home from World Youth Day, that was kind of a question that I was wrestling with. I didn't know what to do with it, but it was a real question. So I went back home from World Youth Day, and actually I didn't do much with that curiosity. It kind of just fell off to the side or went to the back burner because I was focused on this relationship that I was in. And of course, knowing that priests don't get married, if I was in a relationship, I wasn't asking the priesthood question. So I kind of just left it the way it was. But over the next 12 months, that curiosity kind of lingered, and then it actually started to grow. And in retrospect, I can describe it as a curiosity that became an itch, and then an itch that became this really persistent question that I could no longer deny. For some guys in the seminary, they've felt the calling to be a priest since they were young. They're celebrating mass on their kitchen table. For me, that call didn't come until I was about 21. And even then, I was still unsure. I actually convinced myself that there's no way that God would give me such a good relationship with a good Catholic girl if he's calling me to be a priest. So as long as this relationship is good, I don't need to worry about the priesthood. I got to a point where I knew I needed to kind of give up this relationship to give the priesthood a chance. And it actually happened in the context of Mass. The gospel for that day was the gospel of the poor widow who puts 2 coins in the temple collection. And in the homily, the pastor that was preaching that day, he said, it's not about how much you give to the Lord relative to other people, but it's about, are you willing to give your last 2 coins, those things that you hold on for yourself and you've given everything else, but you want to hold on to this last thing. And for me, those words pierced my heart, and I knew this relationship was my last 2 coins that I hadn't yet turned over to the Lord. So that was kind of the turning point. And when I decided to step away from that relationship for the purpose of giving the priesthood a chance, I started to experience a lot of peace and a lot of joy that I hadn't experienced before. Naturally, there was heartbreak and there was sadness. And to this day, I say that decision to leave that relationship was probably one of the harder decisions I've had to make because it was against my natural desires. But I couldn't deny the deeper desires that the Lord was stirring up in my heart. And in retrospect, so that was 10 years ago, I can say, wow, the Lord is never outdone. I give him this small thing that at the time seemed so big, and the return from the Lord is 1,000,000 times more. So you can never go wrong with giving the Lord something, because at the end of the day, if that is what he wants for you, it's going to come back in greater form, right? I'm originally from Vancouver, British Columbia, so Western Canada. I come from a Filipino family. So my parents are immigrants from the Philippines. They came over to Canada in 1989, and I was born in Vancouver. Youngest of 3 children. I love playing sports, so particularly basketball I grew up playing, and so anytime you give me a chance to play basketball, I'll take it. But I also enjoy cycling and snowboarding in the winter. Being from Vancouver, we got the nice mountains out there, and I'm into running as well. So any kind of sports really I'll do. And I just like hanging out with the brothers. We have a lot of free time in between classes here, and we'll get up to all sorts of different things, ping pong and darts. I just enjoy the recreation with the brothers. When I discerned the community, went for a couple of visits, it really started to feel like it was home. And when I finally joined, that's when the community aspect became the thing that kept me in. I was like, wow, I didn't even expect this community aspect, this brotherhood. And as I experienced that, I was like, wow, this is another thing that I really need. And I think one of the misconceptions about the seminary is that guys come in because they're called to be a priest. Well, not really. Guys come in to discern if they're called to be a priest, and it's absolutely normal that half the guys leave, half the guys stay and get ordained. So at the end of my 6th year of formation, I decided to leave formation. I was at a point where I was getting towards the end of my formation that I needed to be increasingly certain and convicted about my call to the priesthood, and in good conscience I knew that I wasn't. And I was very honest about that with the community, and they were very supportive in that. And I kind of just gave that up to the Lord. I enjoyed a very good life back home, and there were a lot of options. I was working a full-time job. Like, everything was working out. So there was no reason for me to say, oh, this is terrible, I'm gonna go back to seminary. But for some reason that priesthood idea kept lingering. The kicker for me, where I started to realize going back to seminary was probably where the Lord was calling me, was being able to distinguish between natural desires of living back home in Vancouver, natural desires of being married, having family life, which are all good and all proper to me being a man. And then these deeper desires that I couldn't quite make sense of, to be a priest. This deeper desire to serve the church, to be in community life. And I say couldn't make sense of apart from going back to seminary. And so as I discerned that with my spiritual director, it became increasingly clear that this was the Lord moving my heart towards the priesthood. The most important thing is that we're saying yes to the Lord. The Lord is going to give the calling, and our response is, well, it's yes or no. But obviously, yes is always the best answer, because that's the only thing that's going to satisfy. So saying yes to the Lord is satisfying because God knows what we were made for, right? I can pursue all sorts of different plans and think it's going to bring me joy, but God knows the purpose of my life. And so if I give my life to the Lord, He's going to make that happen. And there's nothing that's going to satisfy as much as saying, oh, hey, Lord, what you made me for, make it happen. Let's do it.